This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. What I'm going to show today is how to make a cast-on rag for the Ultimate Sweater machine. I begin by counting out 50 needles. That'll be the width of this cast-on rag. This is a very useful tool for situations where you're going to use less than 50 needles or 50 needles. I'll just put this on. Then I take my cut credit card, another useful tool for machine knitters. Open all my latches. Then I'm going to take some elastic thread and hang it over all these open needles. Fold my cuff down. The cuff goes back with all of the needles pushed all the way forward, and then I move the knitting to forward working position. So move all the needles quickly using the yellow card. Finally, I use my cut credit card. Make sure that all these needles are open all the way across. And I can thread up with scrap yarn and knit a few rows. I have knitted 7 or 8 rows of waste yarn, and now I want to introduce the concept of using a ravel cord. What you want for a ravel cord is a really slippery yarn or thread. Rayon or nylon is great. This Omega nylon thread from Hobby Lobby costs less than $3, and there are 300 yards here, so it's a virtually endless supply considering that you can always reuse ravel cord. I just hang a clothespin on the ravel cord and feed it in the USN and just go across very slowly with it. It feeds like a dream because it's slippery. And now I've got a row in here that'll allow me to separate the knitting from the waste yarn really very quickly. Once you try ravel cord, you'll use it all the time. My cast-on rag begins now. I'm using some leftover yarn in a bright color that I thought would be fun, and I'm just going to knit 16 rows and then pick up a hem. After I've knitted 16 rows with this colorful yarn that I'm using for my cast-on rag, what I want to do is hang a hem, and I need to get in close and show you what loops to pick up to hang your hem. What we're going for is to pick up the U-shaped colorful stitch just above the ravel cord, and the first one I want to get is right here. I'm going to pick up that stitch and I'm going to hang it on the needle at the far left edge. So I just pick it up. I'm lifting the cast-on cuff so it won't be quite so heavy. And then I get the next one, which is peeking out in between the ravel cord, and I hang it in the next hook, and I get the next one and hang it on the next hook. I'm going to do this all the way across the knitting. By propping the cast-on cuff on my knees and holding it up just a little and putting one of my hands in between, I'm really able to go pretty quickly in picking up this hem. When I get over to the right-hand side, I'm going to be 1 stitch short, because that's just the shape of the knitted work. So no worries, you just hang the stitches you have and you leave one needle, the far right needle, having only 1 stitch on it, where all the others have 2 stitches on them. Then all the stitches come all the way out to the full forward position, and the knitting gets pushed back behind them, and then you grab your cards again and get this thing lined up again in forward working position. finally, before you can continue to knit, you take the cut credit card and you just run along and make sure that every single one of the hooks is open. This next row will close the hem by knitting through both of the stitches. So you go ahead and you knit across slowly. Which closed the hem. Then you need to knit 8 more rows, and I'll show how to cast off. I've knitted the 8 additional rows, and I'm going to begin my cast off here on the right side. It's really very simple. You're going to transfer this end stitch to the second needle and then pull that needle out. Then you take the yarn and lay it in the hook and you hand knit it back. And then you take that one. It gets transferred over to the next needle. That needle gets pulled out. You lay the yarn in and again you knit it back. Now this little job will go easier if you hang a claw weight under the stitches so that they just behave themselves as you cast off. I'm using this particular cast off, which I do not use for garments normally, because it makes kind of a holy edge, and I want a holy edge. After you've cast off just a few stitches, you'll realize that now you have too much weight on the knitting, so it's pretty easy to remove the waste yarn because we used that ravel cord. Pull the ravel cord all the way out, and the cast on weight and the waste knitting comes right off. Now all you really need to continue with the cast off is just use a single claw weight. Here is the finished cast on rag. It does tend to roll up and it has a hem along the bottom. Your cast on rag is great for situations where you only have a few stitches. You just go across and pick up loops from the cast on rag to begin your knitting. This eliminates the cast on device. It eliminates waste yarn. It's just a very, very simplified method. If you have machine knitting weights, the cast on rag is a great way to attach them to the knitting. Once you've done that, you're going to want to use ravel cord. Let me just put these needles in forward working position. Open the latches. Thread up with some of the ravel cord and go across. Now I'm all ready to knit. This could also be the moment when you put in some kind of a cast on, but I'm just going to do an open cast on and show you how the knitting goes. Then whenever I finally need to remove the ravel cord from the stitches, I just take off the clothespins and whatever I'm using for weight, because after all, I wouldn't want it to land on my toes, and I just grab the ravel cord from one side, whichever side is the long side, and I just pull it right off. That gets the cast on rag off of the knitting and it removes it cleanly. If there were a cast on here, then that would be a finished edge. Whenever I tug out a ravel cord, I need to push the needles back into place. So that's how to use your cast on rag. Nice little tool that you can make for yourself at little or no cost.